Our next speaker is still about the cloud. It's Albane Bruyas, who's working for a cloud factory, as I like to call them, making cloud. It's actually not making cloud; it's making something a bit more sustainable that you can touch, which is servers. So it's a data center, Scaleway. And I mean, we've heard a lot about data centers recently because they've improved, they have environmental impact, and Albane is going to tell us about why sustainability makes sense for tech. Hello, Albane.
Hi, thank you very much. So yes, I'm Albane Bruyas. I'm Chief Operating Officer at Scaleway, and I wanted to talk to you about sustainability and on a different point of view maybe as before, because on my side, I come from supply chain and I find it really interesting that in the tech sector, we consider buying cloud, buying data centers as we should do and as all companies do for all the rest of the purchases that you can have in the company. First of all, I wanted just to make it clear for everyone what is the situation. We have real Earth temperature rising even more than in the last 2,000 years. We have this government issuing inclusive resolutions further to COP26. And it's really on us now to make improvements and to make sure that tech has a good impact on the Earth. So, if the slide passes. To give you a vision of the figures that we know today, the internet and its supporting system produce 900 million tons of CO2 each year. This means significantly more than aviation. We have to have this in mind. And that amount could double onto 2025, looking at the growth that we have on our sector. So it's up to us all to make an effort. If we focus on the data center emissions, 1 to 2% of the world's total electricity is due to data centers. So the energy consumption of data centers has remained stable. This is what is important. Have in mind that even though that we consume a lot, it has been stable since 2015, when at the same time, the traffic has tripled and the use of data centers have doubled. This means that, yes, it's important in terms of electricity usage, but also there are a lot of efforts that are made by the data centers in the world to improve their impact and to make sure that they don't grow as fast as the usage is growing. But anyway, we're in the midst of a massive uptick in cloud computing adoption. Cloud markets should be multiplied by 10 in 10 years. Few figures to understand why we are here and what does it mean exactly. 80% of European companies are still yet to go to the cloud. We have this pandemic imposed shift to working from home that saw a global internet traffic to surge by 40% between February 1 and mid-April 2020. And it continues when we talk about COVID. And finally, another figure which is quite interesting when we talk about AI most of the time, and which is so fashionable today, training one model of AI can emit as much carbon as 5 petrol cars in their lifetime. It's huge. So all of these reasons why we should choose carefully your cloud and the data center on which your cloud is used and is computed. If you are still not convinced about the fact that sustainability is really important for tech and for us all, think about this. Responsibility and sustainability are the key values of the next generation. And that trend is just getting started. Think about this. Green tech startups are expected to grow by 27% by 2024. 90% of millennials will choose the company in which they will work for on sustainability criteria. And finally, global climate tech investment has been multiplied by 5 since 5 years. So what does that mean? That means that even though you are not convinced, if you want to have clients, talents, and funds, you have to be sustainable. Many past attempts to find such solutions have failed because they cost too much or can't be reconciled with finance imperatives. So in other words, they don't make business sense. And this is what we work on at Scaleway, is how you can be sustainable and cost effective. So as I told you, I come from the industry and from the supply chain. And when you are in the supply chain, what you learn is to study all the value chain. This means from the raw material to the production. Raw material is cloud. So it's really important to understand that all your applications and developments will rely on cloud. And so cloud has to be sustainable. This is the first step of your movement as tech companies to sustainability. So we know that also we were talking about PUE and electricity usage. You have to hear that in this massive growth of cloud, and at the same time the need of having data centers that are sustainable and that have great figures to show, not talking about greenwashing, but anyway, great figures to show, we are pushing in the cloud industry to build data centers. And because the people know mostly the reference of PUE, which is electricity usage, sometimes we put apart what is water usage. And this is something really important. You can have a great PUE, and at the same time, water usage, which is really significant. We had, I don't know if you've seen this, but in Ireland, you have 5 million cubic drinking water, which is used per year just to cool data centers. So if I take our example at Scaleway, we decide to work on consuming less energy, and less energy is electricity and water, rather than planting trees, because we control all the value chain. As you said in the introduction, Scaleway is a bit different from some other cloud providers because we have the infrastructure, we manage the hardware, and we have the cloud, so the developments that are using these data centers. So looking at the value chain, what we decided first is to avoid excessive and unnecessary cooling. We control our hardware, and we have even created a room, which is called a stress test room, where we can test our hardware and see what is the temperature they really need. Most of the data centers will go to 20 to 22 degrees of cooling of the servers because it's the usual norm. And now in specifications of clients, this is what is demanded. The reality is servers only need 27 degrees or even 30 degrees. So the first thing we did is that for our servers, we are pushing this 27 to 30 degrees because this means you need less cooling. And so you need less power for your servers. Of course, we made a choice as everyone to have 100% renewable energy in our data centers, because this is our role to make sure, because this is the only thing that you can manage as our clients, that all the energy that we consume is fully renewable and that you don't have a carbon footprint. When I talk about controlling our infrastructure and hardware, I talk not only about temperature, but also the way that we cool our data centers. We have created a unique way of cooling the data centers. It's a unique way for data centers, but absolutely not unique in the world, because it's an ancient Egyptian method, actually. It's a method that uses water. As you know all, when you go out of the pool, you're a bit cold. This is because water captures heat. So what we have done is that we have created a data center that is cooled by this system. We have wet wall of paper, and we challenge the moisture level regarding what is the temperature of the air outside, and we will refresh the air as soon as the air is hot outside to make sure that we have the good temperature in the data center. And of course, what is interesting also in this method is that we quitted what is usually done, which is air conditioning. You have, in most data centers, air conditioning all the time. So this means even if it's 10 degrees outside, you will have air conditioning inside. So what we did is that we put captures everywhere, and we know exactly what is the temperature inside the data center and outside. So when we have fresh air outside, which is the case right now, we just mix temperature and make sure you have the good temperature of the air in the servers. And when in Europe it's not so often. Finally, we really need to cool the air that is coming from outside, and we cannot use inside air. Then we use this adiabatic system, which uses a very low power of electricity and very low water, because it's just moisture level, and it's not like big cooling towers that we really want to ban everywhere in Europe. It's already banned in France, but it should be everywhere in Europe, and for the moment it's not the case. So what we do also, and what is really important, is that we share our PUE. PUE is power usage effectiveness. To say it in another way that is more comprehensive, is that when you have a server which is working and using 1 kilowatt, for example, then you have to measure exactly all the electricity around this server that is used for the infrastructure. So it's electricity, it's cooling, and everything. A PUE of 1.18 with a very, very low water usage efficiency, which is the same. What is the water used for 1 kilowatt is very low. The average in Europe is, in the world even, is 1.59. And what we push on our side is to go to what we call an RDCE, because as I told you, sometimes you can show a very good PUE, but you don't have a good water usage efficiency close to it. So we want to push for a norm, which is a global norm, where we can have the two linked and make sure that you have a total view of your data center footprints on the Earth, looking at these two average. For the moment, anyway, PUE there is a norm, an ISO norm, which is used by everyone, and that can help you. What is important also is that you can know exactly which data center is, where exactly your compute or storage is, because this way you can check. Because this is something to tell you, my PUE is great because I have a great data center, but you have to know exactly where your applications are to make sure that your applications are really having the right electricity usage, or at least the best electricity usage. Some cloud providers, excuse me. So this is the slide I wanted to show you, but anyway, this is the same. You can see on the C5 that you have renewable energy, electricity, and water, but they are used the right way to avoid any impact, too important impacts. So what you may know is that, and was said before, that what is important is that we have 3 scopes for any industry. You have scope 1, which is you directly, scope 2, which is how the power is used, and finally scope 3, which is for data centers, for example, what are doing your suppliers, so hardware suppliers. And so we work at Scaleway not only on infrastructure, as we said before, but also on the hardware. Hardware is a big part of the impact of data centers. What we do, we have technicians that maintain our hardware. Of course, like everyone, we could say, but no, even more, because we have technicians and R&D which are working to refurbish the hardware and make sure that we can use our hardware until 10 years. The average in the world is 3 to 5 years, and you know this because you have a bit the same, even with your computer. 3 to 5 years, it will be less productive and you want to change it. So what we do is that we make the effort to go until 10 years to make sure that we avoid this scope 2 or 3 that is really impactful on the Earth, because most of the hardware is done in Asia, or in Asia, we have not this capacity to have full carbon neutral electricity. You will have coal. So it's really important to think about it and to make sure that we can push these servers. And also we work locally, because it's not only about, when we say sustainability, it's not also environment, it's also it's about economy, it's about social. And so we are working with companies to work on our hardware, and that have a great impact locally where our data centers are. There is a company, for example, called Loxy, that we work with, that we employs disadvantaged young people, and that will help us refurbish our hardware. So we form them also on a job which is the next job of the next century. After studying the value chain to improve each step, Another lesson that you can have from the supply chain and industry is that you shouldn't have only one supplier. Because if you have one supplier, you are dependent on this supplier. You need to, if I could say, keep the power. If you have different suppliers, you can have prices negotiations, you can change in case services doesn't fit to your need, and you can ensure that you have the right level of sustainability you want to have. So my advice for you will be to check you're not already locked in, because some cloud providers can do this, and make sure not to be if you didn't sign a contract for the moment. Make sure also, and this is really important, that your dev have a code which is interoperable. This means that the code can be used on different suppliers, because if you are too much stuck in a supplier, then you cannot change, and you can just assume what the cloud provider will do. And finally, switch globally to a multi-cloud approach by distributing your applications from a cloud provider to another one. This way you can choose regarding all the criteria that you will have to choose your cloud provider, and not just having the information that the cloud provider gives you, but having an overview of what is done everywhere. This is actually another of Scaleway's area of expertise. We can even pilot all those clouds, because we have a product which is called Cosmos, which enables you by Kubernetes to have your applications on different cloud providers. Also, be aware of what cloud means. Sometimes we use cloud, companies use cloud, but don't use it the best way. Cloud is actually the best way to improve tech impact on the earth, because cloud should be used only when it's necessary. Today, 93% of the instances are addressed, 93% of the time. This means that most of the time, compute capacities are not really used, but are connected, so are consuming some electricity. So be aware of it. Make sure your developers control this, and or use other tools that exist and that enable your applications to have the less impact as possible. You have serverless, who develop functions only when they are needed. You have at Scaleway object storage, which is on S3, and also activates only when you need the data and is not activated the rest of the time. And thereby you will save energy, but also money, because you are invoiced each time you are using an instance or a storage. So it's interesting to find the best way of improving this. Beyond the cloud, the tech sector can notably save energy with what we call lean coding. Companies are specialized to help improve their code. Because again, what I was saying before, if you use cloud computing, you will be invoiced as soon as it is used. And so if you have very complex code using a lot of algorithms, using a lot of data, and that you don't make sure that you improve this amount of calculation that are made, of data that are stored, then you will have more costs and more impact on the earth. So improve it. What we did and what can be done, because it's not so funny to rework all the code that you have in your company, is, for example, maybe a sustainable hackathon where you can ask your developers to improve their code, and the leanest code will win. It will be fun for your developers, and at the same time, it will really improve your invoices and your impact. And finally, because we are not stuck, we are all a bit stuck at home by this time, make sure that you have digital cleanup day, for example, that you do it at home or in your company. Make sure of the digital trash that you manage. And while you're at home, think about it. You are all coming from tech companies, and sometimes I even learned these figures. You forget what are the basis of your usage of the internet. So I had a few figures that I find fascinating and that will, I hope, help you to understand that we can have a positive impact even in our everyday life, at home or working at home or working at the office. Do you know that watching a video over Wi-Fi uses 23 times less energy than 4G. 23. Ethernet boxes consume as much as a fridge. So turn them off, at least at night when you don't use them. If you type a website address directly rather than via Google, you save the equivalent of a light bulb for 1 to 2 minutes. And finally, using privacy tools like Signal or DuckDuckGo use less energy because you have less data collected, so less computing and storage behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Albane. Thank you for also talking about the social impact, because sustainability is not only about environmental impact. It is, of course, but it also has a social impact. I quite like your adiabatic cooling system. I think I'm going to start making something similar for my greenhouse in my garden, maybe. But to be more serious, at Scaleway, have you deploy that adiabatic cooling system everywhere, or is it like in a process? And could it be deployed everywhere?
Actually, it's all our new data centers will have this adiabatic system. The thing is that I cannot show in a quick presentation is that all the adiabatic system functions on the airflow, which needs the data room to be all along on a one. You have one data room and the air goes from the right to the left, comes in the right and goes to the left. So some data centers cannot be changed to the adiabatic, unfortunately. So we're working on the actual data centers that we have without an adiabatic, and we already have a PUE of 1.25 or something like this, which is great. And we will do all the new data centers with adiabatic, but unfortunately we cannot change. But what we do is that we move. A big work that we do is migrating the major part of our hardware to the adiabatic data center to make sure that there is the best carbon efficiency that we can.
Yeah, brilliant. And you mentioned, everybody talks about PUE, and you mentioned also WUE. Is there a way to standardize all this? So that you briefly mentioned that maybe there could be some way to measure everything together to give a score instead of having a PUE as the main thing and maybe WE as an option.
Yeah, this is exactly what we want, because I know, again, as a purchaser, when I began my career, I know that the most important is that you can have criteria and equivalent measures that makes the customer sure that he has exactly the capacity to choose with all the information. So what we want to push and what we're working on is really to say, okay, we created one. It's called RDCE. We can give the world the name that we want, but we really want all our fellow cloud providers and data centers to show exactly the same, because we have a PUE norm, but we don't even have a water usage norm, which is really, really impactful, because when you think that each data center is 1 million cubic drinking water that is used each year, it is a big issue. And because for the moment you don't have this norm, then everyone can do everything. So we really have to push, but this is really about lobby. This is about agreeing between the competitors, finding the good calculation. So it takes time, but we will continue on this on Scaleway part, because we really think it's essential. And because if we don't have this, even for us, we want to push to it, because this way we will show how sustainable we are. If we don't have this norm, then anyone can say a bit the figure they want, and we cannot show what is our real value. Can you hear me? Okay, great. No more questions? Okay, so if there is no more question, what I can tell you is maybe that what is really important, let's say, for me, and what we think at Scaleway is that you shouldn't stop. I already said it, but I want it to be as a conclusion, is that you have the power. And as customer, you should push your cloud provider and be demanding in your specifications. You should be demanding on your specifications on the PUE, WE, where is your data, how is it managed? And at the same time, don't be too demanding, because when you have specifications asking for hardware at 22 degrees when actually it supports easily 27 degrees, you are the one who push to a data center which is not sustainable. Really keep this in mind. Specifications to make sure you have the good criteria, but specifications that don't push too far from what is really needed. And be aware that data centers and cloud providers have the infrastructure and the hardware management, so they can improve, and they should improve. And I'm knowing that you have some issues, and I don't know if you need me to talk again or not, and if you need me to continue. So now it's good. So thank you very much for being here and listening to my presentation. I hope you had a lot of information interesting, and see you soon. Bye-bye.